Everdark, Episode 82, Price. Last on Everdark, Christian confronts his past with David, and David himself. Now we turn to another haunted individual at the Ravenscroft Manor.
Elena.
Her name was whispered on the night air. She shifted in unnatural sleep. All she had done was sleep since Heath was taken from her. She had to be dreaming again because...
Elena, mistress, please wake up.
The voice continued. It was soft, ghostly, but there. Her eyes opened. They were sticky with too long sleep. The room was a blur. There were no lights on, and obviously there were no windows in the basement. There was only the slightest strip of yellow light along the bottom of the door to the hallway.
Please, mistress, I need you. Hear me.
The voice was insistent now. Elena's forehead furrowed as she strained to focus through the thick molasses soup that was her head. She was under a compulsion, she realized. Balthazar had done this to her because there was a flash of memory of a beautiful young man with purple eyes that had widened as she had spat angry words at him. Julian Harrow, King Daemon's fledgling. She shivered. The king had taken her fledgling, so she had wanted to take his.
Mistress.
The voice, soft and reverent. It came from the left side of her bed. There was a glow there, a soft blue-white glow at first, but it quickly grew, spreading out from a single spark to fill in the outline of a person.
Heath!
She rocketed up in bed and reached for the figure of her beloved fledgling. Her fingers passed right through him. His expression became sad.
Elena, you can't touch me right now.
You're dead. You're gone.
She put that hand up to her face and sobbed.
I am truly dead, but I'm not gone. I could come back.
Heath told her. His expression was intense. She dropped that hand down and stared at him. Hope kindled in her chest. Would he do it, though, after everything she'd done? Maybe. But Julian would urge him to, and she'd seen how his actions had changed based on Julian's wants and needs.
Yes. King Daemon was making a body for you.
But Heath was shaking his head.
He can't do that for me now. Kaly holds an intrinsic part of me.
How can we get you back fully?
She clenched her hands into fists.
You can't. You have to come to me.
Heath's eyes looked haunted.
Where are you? Aren't you with Kaly?
She asked, confused.
I am.
Heath lowered his head, shame written into his features.
Is he hurting you? Are you all right?
Could the dead ever be all right?
He's not hurting me. Not yet.
Heath's shoulders hunched.
I don't want to be here, Elena. You don't know, you can't know what it's like to be here like this.
He gestured to his spiritual form.
This plane is for the physical, not for what I am now.
I know. I can imagine how hard this is, baby, but we are going to help you.
She told him. Was she lying? Was anyone going to help Heath after what she and he had done?
I tried to kill Daemon's fledgling.
Heath said.
There's no forgiveness for that.
What he'd done was before Julian had become Daemon's fledgling. She had attacked Julian after that, when there was no doubt about who he was, and that probably was unforgivable. But Julian's gentle expression crossed through her mind's eye.
You were misled. You followed Celine's path unknowingly.
She assured him.
The king was willing to bring you back before.
Heath frowned, as if that went against something he had been told.
Are you sure that he wouldn't have simply brought me back to punish me?
No, that does not appear to be his way. He is much more direct than that.
She said.
But I must get Balthazar now so we can help you. He will know what to do.
You need to come to Lasting.
Heath told her.
Lasting?
Elena slid her legs off the side of her bed and tried to stand. She sank back down as her legs did not want to work. She put a hand on her head as it throbbed.
Definitely compulsion. He wants me to stay here, in this room, so I don't attack Julian.
Elena's thoughts tumbled when she remembered her actions with the young man. Her rage and loss had been overwhelming. It had surged through her blood like poison. Higher thoughts had been drowned out because of her loss, but all of that was dulled now, likely also part of Balthazar's work.
Before he takes all my memories of Heath.
She shivered. Could she have survived that? Yes. Balthazar would have ensured it.
And I would have no idea what I lost.
That was horrific to her, but she had to admit that now that her loss was muffled, she could think more clearly. The pain was so much less that she didn't want to curl into a ball and simply die and join Heath.
But what about Ridley? She still needs me. I love her just as much.
She shook herself and focused once more on the ghost of her fledgling. She tried to reach his mind. Souls had thoughts, clearly. She needed to know what Heath was thinking. The only way he was here was because Kaly was allowing it. Maybe Kaly was making him say what he was saying, or maybe this was just an illusion, and not her Heath at all. She wished her thoughts were not so damned muzzy.
I should be grateful I can think it all. Balthazar could have simply burned out my mind.
She reached out to Heath's mind then. There was a prickling sensation. Heath had no guard up against her, not that fledglings really could do that. Only Balthazar had ever been able to hide things from a master or mistress. Heath was no exception in this. His mind had always been very open to her. After lying in his first life, Heath had been transparent as glass with her, and what she felt from Heath was fear. He was terrified. He did not want whatever Kaly had in store for him if she didn't save him, and he'd seen a
Gate? What is that?
It called to Heath as much as repelled him. He was a vampire, and death was the antithesis of what he was. He desperately wanted to be what he had been, but was frightened that could never be.
Show me more. Show me more of what you've seen.
She pressed. It was a subconscious demand that Heath might not even know she was making. She didn't intend for him to know. His recent memories suddenly appeared before her, single images to give her an idea of what they were. She saw Artemis Lucius in many of them, but she now knew from Heath that he was Kaly. That beautiful child with the cold eyes had always been an immortal. Her lips pressed tightly together. She chose one of the earliest memories that showed Kaly in them. What threw her was that in this memory, Kaly wasn't talking to Heath. He was talking to her. Elena, Kaly said. That precise, clipped voice no more welcoming than she ever recalled it being. She jerked back, almost losing hold of Heath's mind altogether, but she caught herself. Her actions were still so sluggish, otherwise she would have been completely out of Heath's head. She lowered herself into the memory again. Elena, Kaly repeated, I am certain that the first thing you are going to do is to check your fledgling's mind. You are an Eiros, after all. A sliver of a smile. Kaly's tone was not dismissive or filled with disgust as most vampires were about their abilities, but there was no warmth either. I am here to make you an offer. I will give Heath back to you, and grant you both sanctuary, if you bring Julian Harrow to me.
Mistress.
Heath's voice rose up, distracting her from the memory meant just for her.
If you don't do as he says, he'll destroy me.
Elena's heart clenched. Her thoughts froze even as the memory started to unspool again. Kaly said, Elena, this is what you must do. Balthazar gratefully turned to leave the oppressive confines of the spire's dungeon, to go look for Christian.
Are you just going to leave me here?
Kaymorn cried, clearly trying not to sound panicked. But he was. Afraid of the dark? Balthazar asked without turning around.
I can help you. I can bring the Harrows back. You don't want me injured. It's a draining spell to do. I will not be able to do it if I am not completely rested.
Kaymorn told him. What's stopping you from resting here? It seems to me quite conducive to sleeping, Balthazar said with a careless wave towards the hideous, dark interior of the dungeon.
There's nothing to eat here.
Oh, yes. You can't reach the stinking corpses over there. Besides, they are quite desiccated. Balthazar mused.
Stop being obtuse. Are you going to leave me here to rot? I need food. I need light. I need my books to prepare.
Do not worry. You will be fed, Kaymorn. Unlike how you treated Seer. You'll get your books. if they are found to be necessary. Oh, and I'll bring you a light stone, or maybe a flashlight, Balthazar said with a cruel smile tinting his voice. But you're staying in this damned dungeon. No finery for you. No ridiculous thrones, no silk robes, not even a goddamn blanket. And the truth is that this is far better than you deserve. He could not help the flash of anger that laced his voice. It really was better than Kaymon deserved. He took great pleasure in walking towards the stairs.
Balthazar!
Kaymon hissed and grabbed the bars to shake them. They didn't budge.
You cannot leave me here!
Oh, yes, I can. Until Damon says otherwise. This is where you stay. Balthazar put a foot on the first step.
Where is he? Ask him to release me.
Kaymon was almost pleading. He and Julian are probably making love, Balthazar said with a shrug. I am certainly not going to disturb them. The only sound was his footsteps as he walked up the stairs. Kaymon's mind was locked on the idea of being made love to by a sire that cared for him. The sadness that bloomed in Kaymon's chest caused a matching feeling in Balthazar's. It was something that they shared, a twin pain. And he didn't like to feel sympathy for Kaymon. He didn't want there to be anything between them at all. But there was. After watching the Harrow's deaths through Kaymon's memories, he had learned everything he could from Kaymon. Annoyingly, Kaymon hadn't known much. He was legitimately in the dark, as they had been about Artemis being Kaly, and he'd admitted the fraud of the Order even without being compelled. Other than the embarrassing, to Kaymon anyway, revelations that Kaymon wished he was Damon's fledgling, and that he had deep insecurities, he had little information of use. The latter shouldn't have been a surprise to Balthazar, but it had been. Maybe because it had always seemed to him that Kaymon was the ultimate insider, while he had wanted to be accepted but never would be. Now the shoe was on the other foot, and that pleased him in a way, but it also depressed him somehow, as the door to the dungeon clanged behind him, leaving Kaymon meditating in the dark. Balthazar immediately ran into Arceus and Fiona in the hallway. The two of them were in deep conversation. The brush of their minds told him what was so enthralling. Fiona wanted to teleport into Lasting and try to steal the gems holding Julian's parents. If not, at least check out Kaly's defenses. That is a terrible idea, Balthazar said with a frown. He imagined Kaly simply crushing the stones and the Harrow souls the moment that Fiona stumbled into his rooms.
Why? Jealous? Because you did not think of it and cannot do it?
Fiona lifted an eyebrow at him, annoyed that he'd listened into her thoughts and a private conversation. Well, if I had thought of it, I would have rejected it as foolish. So no, Fiona, I'm not jealous, Balthazar told her archly.
Then what?
She crossed her arms over her chest. Have you ever been to Lasting? Balthazar asked.
No, but Kaymon has. Many of the Kaly here have. We can ask them.
She pointed out. You're gifted at teleporting, clearly, as you are. Who you are, but I remember a moment all too well when you teleported us one time into Solace, a place you know well, and landed us in a tree, he pointed out. You remember that? Her lips pressed together.
I'll review the maps. We'll talk to Kaymon and Lisette and...
You're going blindly into enemy territory against someone who plays with souls for fun. While we're not friends, I have no desire to see you made into an ornament for Kaly, he said with a shake of his head.
It's not such a terrible idea, Balthazar.
Arceus argued gently.
She could phase in well outside of the city centre, then she could teleport from place to place where she can see where she's going.
And no one is going to see her doing this? Kaly's look a certain way. Even those that aren't white as sheets dye their hair. Fiona, you are the last person anyone would think was a Kaly, he pointed out. Fiona's hands fisted at her sides.
We need a way to get those gems with the Harrow souls away from Kaly before we can do anything. I am the best person to do that.
Actually, a helm or a mirror would be the best person, or maybe both, Balthazar said, tapping his chin. Then he shook himself. Or the best person would be Damon to go. He can teleport, turn invisible, and look like anyone. He's got all the powers.
He's still growing in strength, though. If he could not get into Solace, then Lasting will be beyond him right now, too.
Fiona pointed out.
So I could phase him in and then...
Damon needs to be part of this planning. He's not here. He doesn't think now is the right time to move. Balthazar cautioned them. He knows Kaly better than anyone. He will figure this out. I don't think we should be jumping ahead on anything. Fiona looked down, arms still tightening around her chest.
It is so frustrating to do nothing.
Hardly nothing.
Arceus put a hand on her shoulder.
Damon expects us to start to rebuild the Order into something better. We need to send out people to find others that are interested in joining us and Damon.
Fiona scuffed her boot against the shiny stone floor.
Yes, I suppose. But it seems so pointless until we take out Kaly.
When Kaly sees that the whole of the vampire world has turned against them, they may think differently about standing against Damon on their own.
Arceus said. I have a feeling that Kaly has never been a fan favorite. They probably will see themselves more of a hero and the rest of us as stupid sheep for falling for Damon, Balthazar remarked dryly.
Perhaps, but we need to establish a peaceful transition for the vampires.
Arceus clasped his wrists and covered those with the sleeves of his robes.
We've seen how Damon can solve issues. I would assume this situation with Kaly might very well be handled with the same efficiency. So, we must make the people ready.
Balthazar thought of how Kaymorn was so certain that Damon was going to reveal the vampire's existence to the world. I think Damon might have more changes coming. Arceus raised a thick eyebrow.
What do you mean?
Kaymorn thinks that Damon intends to reveal our existence to humans. And maybe, be king of everybody. Crazy, right? It is undoubtedly crazy. He looked between Arceus and Fiona, who stared at him with lips slightly parted. You don't think it's crazy either, do you? He put a hand to his forehead as if he felt a headache coming on, and maybe he did. Damon is going to do it, isn't he?
It sounds like something he would do,
Arceus said carefully. Fiona shook her head and looked upwards at the ceiling.
So, let me get this straight. We have to prepare all the vampire kind to know that Damon and the Immortals are real. Most of them, hell, maybe all of them, are still around. Kaly has been pulling the strings of the Order, which he made up of whole cloth because he is pissed at Damon. And oh, by the way, Damon is going to reveal our existence to humanity and rule them. Is that about right?
Yes, I think that about captures it. Balthazar nodded, feeling overwhelmed by it all just as Fiona did.
Is he going to wait a day or so before he does all of this?
Fiona asked. I would have thought he would have stormed lasting already, but he took Julian home, Balthazar said. He squeezed the top of his nose. I think he has an idea of what he's going to do, and when. We need to just have our own thoughts in order to give him.
We need to caution him to move slowly.
Fiona looked stricken.
For all his wisdom, he is neither vampire nor human. He has no idea how they will react to this information. Can you imagine how this would shake humanity?
Fiona tightened her arms around herself.
We all went through our personal journeys to accept the existence of vampires and then to become one.
Oh, don't worry. I think we'll all be given talk shows. We'll have people knocking down our doors to be turned. There'll be plenty of crazies, too, and upheaval. But it won't be as it would have been when we were turned, Balthazar stated.
I know Damon is king, but shouldn't he at least ask us what we think? This affects all of us, not just him.
Fiona cried. He is king. That's what he'll say. Balthazar laughed.
He is.
Arceus agreed with a nod. Oh, you're getting all worshipful about him again. Balthazar, though, smiled.
Every time we've doubted him, he's shown us how wrong we are. I vote we place our confidence in him.
Arceus replied. While he takes us all happily off a cliff, yes, it will be a wild, if short, ride. Or maybe he will establish a new world order, Balthazar said with a dry laugh. I think he'll listen to what we have to say. Will it affect his plans? No idea. Probably not. But like I said, wild ride.
You're the closest one to him, Balthazar. You should be more serious about this.
Fiona chided.
Arceus and I can assist you in speaking with him.
Balthazar held up a hand. Hold on. We don't know what he's doing for sure. One step at a time before we march up to him to tell him our thoughts.
You know he's going to do it, though. We all know.
Fiona reminded him. Let's control what we can. The two of you, he gestured at the two of them, need to get all the religious people here.
Which you are not part of?
Arceus smiled. I'm his best friend. I can't worship my best friend. Balthazar shook his head. Besides, he needs someone to bring him down to earth.
I thought that was Julian's job.
Arceus raised his eyes. It's a joint mission. Now I am going to get Christian and improve my mood. Balthazar slapped Arceus on the shoulder and headed to the elevator. As the elevator doors closed behind him, Balthazar stretched out his senses to find Christian's mind. He expected his fledgling to be with Seer and Sophia, but he found the two Seer vampires in a bathroom. There was warm water that was sweetly scented. He wasn't surprised that Christian was not involved in that, so his senses slipped from them to nearby minds. He alighted on Christian's just a few doors down from the two Seer vampires. Balthazar immediately frowned as he sensed Christian was in a heightened emotional state. He tried to reach Christian's mind and try to calm him, but it was like trying to stand still on slick ice on a steep hill. All he could see were random images of David. Oh, hell no. What is going on here? Come on, move faster, elevator, Balthazar muttered.
This is necessary.
Seer's mind floated out. He frowned even more. Seer, what do you mean?
He's a speaker to the dead. He has to put his dead to rest,
she said, and then her mind shut. Balthazar ground his teeth together. As soon as the elevator doors were opening, he was slipping between them and running down the hallway. The door to the room that Christian was in was closed and locked. Not that this was any problem for Balthazar. He simply shattered the door with 2 heavy blows. The remnants crunched under his boots. What he saw, though, confused him. The room was square and black, smothered in velvet with a shattered mirror on the far wall. Christian stood in the center of the room. Blood dripped from his right clenched hand. Christian, what happened? Balthazar grasped his fledgling by his biceps and resisted the urge to shake him.
It wasn't my fault,
Christian said, his voice hoarse and low as if he had been screaming. What? Well, whatever it is, I'm sure it isn't. And if it's about David, it most certainly isn't.
About David.
Christian focused on him, and his mind opened to Balthazar.
It wasn't me.
No, of course it wasn't, Balthazar agreed. But he realized that this was a revelation for Christian. Of course, he thinks that more should be expected of him than any other teenager pursued by a cretin.
I saw it.
Christian gestured to the mirror, which was starting to reform. The cracks were flowing like water and reforming. Balthazar took Christian's wounded hand and gently teased it open. The gem was in Christian's palm. The cuts were already healed. Just tacky blood remained to show what had happened. Balthazar drew out a tissue and started to clean it. Christian's blood was normally something not to be wasted on a tissue, but this blood was shed in pain, and he would not ingest it. He would let it flow away from both of them. Christian was again looking up at him.
I see it all now. And I want David to go.
Balthazar smiled. That's good.
He won't go, though, Balthazar. He won't leave.
Christian pressed against him then, curled tightly against his chest and tucked his head beneath Balthazar's chin. It was a rare moment of weakness. Balthazar wrapped his arms around him. Do not worry, Christian. We can fix this. I know how to fix this, Balthazar said, feeling a sense of dread. He would have to pay for this. Oh, how he would pay. But he'd do anything for Christian. Kaymorn will know how to make David go. We'll ask him for help. Join us next time for episode 83, Reprieve.
If you want to support this podcast and get the unedited episodes, we actually have something better than a Patreon. I have my own serial subscription website, wraithrain.com. It's an old-fashioned paywall site, just like Netflix or Crunchyroll. With a membership, you do get the uncut versions of Everdark with no intros, outros, or edited parts. just the chapters as they were meant to be heard before we've had to make it all Disney safe. If this sounds interesting to you, try us out for a month. The link to sign up is in the notes. The most you'll pay is $9.95 a month, and you'll be directly supporting us, real people, not big corporations like Amazon or Netflix, not content created with AI. Wraith Rain is a small team of actual humans doing the best we can to transport you with romantic action and adventure stories. We really thank you for your support.